the Khalistani menace that continues in Canada after violent attack by Khalistani extremists on Hindu-Canadian devotees in Brampton has revealed the severity of the Khalistani extremism in Canada, where these extremists who stormed into the premises of the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton in Canada, assaulting devotees and vandalizing property. This attack that comes on the heels of recent spate of anti-terror and anti-Hindu threats by Khalistani leader Pannona as far as who has been publicly warning against Diwali celebrations in Canada. Meanwhile, Canadian Prime Minister took to X to condemn the violence, saying that the acts of violence at the Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton is completely unacceptable. Every Canadian has a right to practice their faith freely and safely, and thanking the police there for their swift response. Let's in the meantime introduce our guest joining us here on the broadcast. We have Daniel Bodman, Canadian journalist, and also we have Rahul Yendamuri of the Board of Director of Hindi Forum also joining us. Let's in the meantime get you this update that is also coming across as the menace that has been growing. The Indian High Commission has also condemned the attack, calling it as deeply disappointed to see such disruptions and also raising the concerns for the safety of Indian nationals and calling this attack as anti-India. The element that seems to be similar in the attack that has happened previously in Surrey and also in Vancouver as well. Sagrika is with us as far as the statement that has now been released on part of the Indian High Commission. Sagrika, the concerns being raised over the recent attack.
Now, the latest statement by the High Commission of India goes on to read, and I quote, violent disruption outside consular camp in Brampton, Ontario on the 3rd of November. I'm just reading out from what the Indian High Commission has said. As in previous years, the High Commission of India in Ottawa and Consulate Generals of India in Vancouver and Toronto have organized and planned consular camps during this period for the benefit and ease of local life certificate beneficiaries, that is Canadians and Indians. On account of the prevailing security situation in Canada, the Canadian authorities had been requested well in advance to provide strong security measures for these events, which for consulate routine consular work. Now, we have seen violent disruption today orchestrated by anti-India elements. So, India has blamed anti-India elements for the attacks that are taking place outside the consular camp, co-organized with the Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton near Toronto. It is deeply disappointing to see such disruptions being allowed for routine consular work being organized by our consulates with the fullest cooperation of local organizers. We also remain very concerned for the safety of applicants, including Indian nationals, on whose demand such events are organized in the first place. Despite these efforts by anti-India elements, our consulate was able to issue more than 1,000 life certificates to the Indian and the Canadian applicants. Now, they also mentioned that there were also attempts to disrupt similar camps held in Vancouver and in Surrey on the 2nd and 3rd of November. So, not just Brampton. The Indian High Commission has now confirmed that anti-India elements have tried to disrupt consular work in two other places, that is Vancouver and in Surrey. Now, let's take you through the reactions or the condemnation coming in from Canadian establishment and also leaders in Canada. Justin Trudeu says the acts of violence at the Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton today are unacceptable. Every Canadian has the right to practice their faith freely and safely. Thank you for the police are swiftly responding to protect the community and investigate this incident. But Amita, what is missing in this condemnation is the fact that nobody, no leader, especially if you look at Justin Trudeau and also the opposition in Canada, they are not clearly and unequivocally naming and blaming Khalistanis for what they have done to Hindu devotees. Now, let me also take you through what Pierre Poilievre has said. He says completely unacceptable to see violence targeting worshippers at the Hindu Sabha Mandir in Brampton today. All Canadians should be free to practice their faith in peace. Conservatives condemn this violence unequivocally. I will unite our people and end the chaos. Again, no mention of Khalistanis being responsible for the violence against Hindu devotees.
All right, Sagrika, thank you for that. Daniel, what do you make of this? Because here on one hand, Canadian Prime Minister releasing Diwali videos, you know, showcasing his sacred threats from Hindu temples amid rising tensions with India, and then such attacks happen so openly, so brazenly. You believe a line that has now been crossed?
Yeah, we're definitely in a new stage of this. This is to use a phrase I hate, escalation of the violence here. We've seen, attacks on Hindu temples. We've seen vandalism, but this is a broad daylight assault on people and worshippers. I mean, they're literally being beat with sticks that say Khalistan on them, with Khalistani flags, and our leaders can't condemn it as Khalistani violence. It's very worrying, and a lot of us, I mean, me included, were raising the alarm bell, saying we were on the pathway for this to happen. The last year, Diwali worshippers were attacked in a Mississauga, I believe, mall. For the last year, again, Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh have been leading an anti-India, anti-Hindu crusade. We've been allowing the Khalistanis to rampage around the streets. And Panun was promising this, telling people to attack Diwali services, saying November 2nd and 3rd, particular days to do it. They organized this. They encouraged violence, and then it happened. And they know, because all the major political parties have signaled that they are too scared or too stupid to do anything about Khalistan.
No, but scared of what? Scared of what? I mean, do they tremble to even call out the Khalistanis? Because this clearly cannot be freedom of speech and expression.
They would be, it's for different things. The conservatives would be scared of being called racist by the media. I mean, it's a ridiculous fear in some sense, and it's a legitimate fear in others. If the conservatives were to say this is a Khalistani attack and it's unacceptable, the entire media would start calling them, race mongers and racists and trying to get them killed and murderers and all this different stuff. So they don't want to deal with it. There's also the potential fear of, this goes more for ethnically what you ethnic candidates.
Yeah,
we'll
but
calling
race mongers and all of that, fears that you are just raising, Daniel, doesn't exactly bode well when it comes to such kind of attacks. For us, these are terrorists. Rahul, because these attacks by Khalistanis, extremists on Hindu Canadian devotees inside the premises of the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton, that showcases how deep and how brazen Khalistani violent extremism has become in Canada.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's about 18 weeks ago, Daniel himself was present with me. We were there at the Kanishka bombings commemoration ceremony. There also, it was Daniel and me who had teamed up to kind of distance the Khalistani activists from the other people who are offering the services. And you need to understand that the people who came there to offer services were not just Indians or just Hindus. There were different people of different countries, different faiths. This was the same issue. The issue has been happening on Canadian soil for a while, and the Canadian government not willing to mention the choice of word Khalistani is alarming. And also, I think, above and beyond what Daniel just mentioned, it is also in view of the federal elections coming up. So they also want to prepare their strategy, and the votes count. But I think what the government needs to realize is there is significant evidence that not all people who are Sikhs are necessarily Khalistani believers. There are many people in that faith as well who believe in peace, who have been peaceful, and even there were certain gentlemen who attended the commemoration ceremony with us 18 weeks ago at Queen's Park, Toronto. And there was also a gentleman who had a pagadi that was representing the Indian flag of the tricolor. So I think there is a need to understand that appeasement politics need not take play here. There is a high possibility that you will still get your votes by doing the right thing. And
but appeasement
Khalistanis
politics
and
is
Sikhs
now
are
leading,
not necessarily
Daniel,
the same.
of a threat looming large, especially when it comes to the Hindus, the peace-loving Hindu community. Who will save them now?
It's up to them to save themselves, it looks like. And that's the harsh reality, is if the Hindu community does not organize and does not show some sort of political strength, they will be chased out of their homes violently. And that's it. A message from history for Hindus in Canada, November 3rd, 2024 is Kristallnacht. The police, the establishment, and their mobs of rabid ideologues have declared war on you. No one's going to come and help you. The police, as you saw, attack the Hindus and not the Khalistanis, unless the Hindu community shows some political strength, some personal, political backbone that they're going to take measures, they're going to start to exert themselves. The politicians will do nothing to help them. And if the politicians do nothing to help them, the police will do nothing to help them. Because the police and the political class and the media and all the sort of institutions in Canada are very incestuous and covered and within each other. And
we stay here, Daniel, because it seems that as far as the snake is concerned in Canada's backyard, one day will come and to bite as far as the authorities are there. Rahul, because asserting as far as Canada seems to have now become a safe harbor, especially when it comes to the radicals. One day they will hit back at them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that goes back to the point, right? For them, it doesn't really matter. And I think we need to also observe that in some of the videos, you can see that people, along with the Khalistani flag, they also had a flag of the United States of America, a couple of flags, right? And they're dragging all these flags on the streets, beating people around. So there is no logic as to why a United States flag is even present on that premises. You're carrying a Canadian flag, it's happening on Canadian soil. You want to support Khalistan, you are carrying the Khalistani flag. You are against India, you are trying to vandalize an Indian flag. But there is no purpose of a United States of America flag to be there. That speaks volumes about their intent in general and just them finding reasons. This snake is definitely going to come back and bite. There have been multiple incidents over the last year and a half. It has been a history of 39 years of the biggest terrorist attack, not just on Canadian soil, but also in the history of world aviation. Nobody has seen that kind of a terror attack in the history of world aviation till date, till that incident happened, which claimed 329 lives.
Absolutely.
And
So we're
yet,
not calling it as
the
a
Canadian
recent spot in
government
attacks,
is
but
not
something that has been
reacting.
going on for decades. In the last 40 years, one of the deadliest attacks that we have seen, and that happened in the air, because it seems to be absolutely unacceptable how these Khalistani goons were able to attack innocent women and children as well at the Hindu Sabha Mandir, even though the police were there at the scene. However, till now, zero arrests that have been made so far. Politicians there in Canada also reacting. Sagrika, if you can take us through the reactions, please.
So Chandra Arya, Canadian MP who has been vocal about the Khalistani menace, has gone on to say, and he's very scathing in his criticism. There is one point he makes which also echoes what our outgoing High Commissioner had said. A red line has been crossed by Canadian Khalistani extremists today. The attack by Khalistanis on the Hindu Canadian devotees inside the premises of the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton shows how deep and brazen has Khalistani violent extremism become in Canada. I begin to feel, this is important Amita, he says, I begin to feel that there is a grain of truth in the reports that in addition to Canadian political apparatus, Khalistanis have effectively infiltrated into our law enforcement agencies. No wonder that under the freedom of expression, Khalistani extremists are getting a free pass in Canada. Very strong criticism coming in. As I've been saying for long, Hindu Canadians, for the security and safety of our community, need to step up and assert the rights and hold politicians accountable.
Absolutely. And even when it comes to the action, well, till now you can see the police presence there, but as far as arrests are concerned, none of them that has been made. Daniel, who is exactly pulling the strings? You know, Khalistani extremists getting a free pass in Canada. There has been many warnings that have been given of Hindu Canadians on their security, on the safety of the community, and that needs to be stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to be a bit heterodox here in Canada. I'm of the opinion that no one's really pulling any strings. It's all just a massive incompetence and apathy that seems to be going on. So are there some Khalistanis that have gotten into different institutions? Yes. There are presence of Khalistanis throughout this. But this smells more to me more like widespread institutional failure than any, like, I doubt Justin Trudeau got on the phone to the Peel Region Police and said, attack the Hindus today, protect my precious Khalistanis. I don't think that is what happened.
No,
But
because Daniel, I'm talking about the recent development that happened as far as Gurpatwant Singh Pannon is concerned, residing in the US, writing to the Canadian Prime Minister, citing that there is a possible involvement when it comes to the Indian High Commission and the diplomats there. And for them, as far as Canada is concerned, he's just like an activist. An action that was taken, we have seen in the recent tensions that have escalated between India and Canada, how diplomats were also targeted. We've spoken to the Indian High Commissioner as he came back to India, and he said that physically his life was in danger.
Oh, no, I'm not denying any of this. Listen, I was predicting this all was going to happen. You could predict this. All the data points were there. Me and some others were screaming from the rooftops the last month that this was all going to happen. I am just saying that you would be very impressed. You don't know how little Canadian politicians and ministers know about anything until you speak to them. Never underestimate the sheer incompetence of the Canadian bureaucracy. And don't always assume that someone knows what's going on. As I'm saying, just never rule out monumental incompetence, gross negligence, stupidity, and then cowardice, accounting for how the Canadian bureaucracy responds to something. So might there be one or two Khalistanis dipping their finger in the pond here and there down the way? Yes, I think that's reasonable. But again, I don't think Justin Trudeau's on the phone doing this. I just think there are sort of Khalistanis at all
but
points
the
in the
bureaucracy
system.
that Daniel you're pointing out, hasn't that too been infiltrated by these Khalistani elements as far as we talk about the law enforcement agencies as well?
Well, I mean, we don't do again. We don't have a full accounting of the law enforcement agencies and who's been infiltrated by them and who's been on and this and that. I mean, India has some accusations about border service people and all that. I'm simply saying is we don't know who pulled the strings, and someone doesn't need to be pulling the strings from the top in the Canadian government to have an absolutely morally abhorrent and abysmal response to a bunch of terrorists attacking a Hindu temple on Diwali.
Yes. But what stops them from calling a terrorist, Rahul? Because we heard that coming from the country's NSA, this kind of validation that they're seeking, especially when it comes to the world newspapers, like from the Washington Post as well, they want their point of view in a way to, tarnish or bring disrepute to India's image. That is also a concerted effort that seems to be taking place on part of Canadian authorities.
I think there is some sort of, there is a coincidence in this matter, right? I don't think there's two things about that. I think the coincidence is very clearly visible that there is some sort of unrest between the Canadian and Indian authorities. And at the same time, this issue continues to be aggravating. But I think the bigger challenging question that poses my mind and something that begins to threaten the existence of Hindus in Canada, given these distressing attacks, right, is that there is a video in our possession, which we would be gladly willing to share, where there is a police officer, without being instigated, inside the premises of the temple, fighting like a hooligan. I have only seen street rowdies or somewhere in the movies this level of fighting. I have never seen a law enforcement official do that. Everywhere I have only seen law enforcement officials reciting rights, peacefully taking people into custody, and sometimes they do exercise pressure. If situations are out of control, they do have to exert physical force. In this case, there was nothing of that nature. I saw an officer beating up a Hindu devotee inside the temple with his bare hands. What does that speak of? In this case, are we going to talk about infiltration, or are we still going to turn a blind eye?
Calling themselves as racists or such kind of fearmongers is concerned, that is completely contradictory to the view, especially when it comes to safeguarding religious rights and having that freedom to practice your own religion in a peaceful manner. Hindu community that we're looking at, because we have seen the kind of tensions that has been escalating. My colleague Pradip Duggal is also joining us right now. He has seen it all happening. In fact, when it comes to the latest position, Pradip, that happened, pointing fingers directly at the Modi government for the alleged plot to kill Khalistanis in Canada, where even when it comes to the leaders here in country, they have been naming them and calling them as implicated as well.
Amita, I'll be making 3-4 quick points because you rightly said that here in this case in Canada, we have seen that they are trying to project the villains as victims. The villains like Hardeep Singh Nijjar is being projected as activist and messiah of peace. He was a terrorist who was involved in anti-India activities. And then people like, we have seen that how they had been allowing those Khalistani terrorists to infiltrate into the law enforcement agency. Just a few days back, we broke a story here on Times Now. We showed that how Sandeep Singh Sandhu, who was involved in killing of Shaurya Chakravarti and also several terror-related activities, he was promoted to the post of superintendent in Canadian Border Service Association. If such people are there on the border, you can yourself expect that how many Canadians, Khalistanis will be able to infiltrate into Canada. And third thing is that a terrorist like Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, who is really wanted by National Investigation Agency, he is dictating terms to Justin Trudeau, writing a letter, providing evidence, and he is asking him to expel Indian High Commissioner. And see, action has been finally initiated after 1 year. So whatever that Justin Trudeau is saying, all that evidence is being provided by none other than Gurpatwant Singh Pannu.
And of course, the admission that came in from Justin Trudeau saying that they had only intel inputs. However, no concrete evidence is something that India time and again that has been pointing out to present so as for the country to take or initiate action. However, taking a risk as far as straining ties with India is concerned, India has made it very clear that there would be consequences at diplomatic levels. Thank you very much, Daniel, Rahul, and to you, Pradip, as well for joining in. This is a broadcast as we continue to get you more details coming in of these recent attacks on two Hindu temples that has taken place in Canada.